Hey guys, it's Haven, and I'm going to be talking about One Piece chapter 1060 that just came out. So, we don't have any cover story this time because there's just so much happening that the actual title page is full of panels. So, let's talk about it. So, we open up right into it. The very first panel is straight into the story. We don't even get like a title page or like anything like that or a cover story. So it starts out with Luffy being very, very frustrated. We actually see the Sunny has launched itself into the air because Luffy is so emotional right now and frustrated. And I think we can probably take this little moment here as Luffy is probably not in full control of his Haushoku Haki or the Conqueror's Haki, and we can see that the Sea Beasts slash Sea Kings, Neptunians, whatever you want to call them, they're actually like kind of getting a little freaked out and a little like they have that kind of alert and bugged out eyes, so we can kind of take it that Luffy's Haki is a little out of control right there, and rightfully so. Robin has just read the news queue to Luffy and found out that Sabo has been accused of killing Nefertari Cobra, or Vivi's dad, right? And Luffy is very frustrated because he knows Sabo would never do something like that. And I think we just kind of have to take Luffy's word for it because, yeah, Luffy really hasn't been with Sabo since they were little kids and they briefly reunited in Dressrosa, but we can also be affirmed by this because Robin, who actually spent the last 2 years with the Revolutionary Army and Sabo, actually, has known him as an adult. And she says, like, I agree, I'm with you there, because the Revolutionary Army, their goal is not to take out kings and leaders of nation. Their enemy is the Celestial Dragons. And I appreciate that Oda has Robin put her perspective in that too, because like Luffy hasn't known his brother since they were like 8, 10, something like that. And then we focus in on the newspaper, and it also tells us that Vivi is missing. And so Luffy, immediately being Luffy, is very emotional and reactionary, and he wants to go to Alabasta immediately and just drop everything and go because he's very concerned for Vivi. He's upset about Cobra. And Zoro has to be the voice of reason here, saying that, what's it gonna do? Like, what are we gonna do here? Like, King Cobra is dead. Like, what can we even do to help at this point? Plus, we have no idea where Vivi is. The last time she was seen was at the Reverie in Marie-Joie, and we can't exactly bust into Marie-Joie because that place is swarming with world nobles, it's swarming with marines, it's swarming with people who are gonna fight, and like higher up people too, because of the pecking order and hierarchy and society of the world nobles, right? Doesn't make sense. And of course, Luffy's not thinking rationally and wants to go to Marie-Joie. And then we see the contents of the barrel that's been sitting in this scene, which is of course Caribou. And now we have all the crew's reactions. In the next few panels, of course, Zoro and Luffy are still arguing. Zoro's trying to explain to Luffy, like, don't be a moron, we can't just barge into Navy HQ, we can't just barge into Marie-Joie, that makes no sense. We don't have any information, we don't even know if she's there, we don't know where she is. Just calm down. And now we can see everybody else kind of reacting to this, and we see Sanji, Chopper, Usopp, and Nami are all very upset and frustrated about this because they actually knew Vivi, right? Vivi was their friend. And, she traveled with them for a while and they helped her save Alabasta. And, of course, Sanji's upset, he's crying. Chopper's upset, he's crying because Vivi's dad is dead, and they're talking about how, he was such a good king, and Usopp's getting frustrated, and Nami immediately is like thinking about Vivi, just like when she heard that Luffy's brother died, in his arms at Marineford, and she's thinking about how Vivi must be feeling, what's happening with Vivi, like how is she taking this? And now we kind of see the responses of the Straw Hats who didn't know Vivi, and they're trying to piece together what happened. We have Jinbei, who is just kind of reflecting on the Reverie, saying that a lot happened. He's probably also kind of thinking as a former warlord, like, wow, that's kind of crazy that they actually went and did away with the warlord system. And Frankie is thinking about Sabo, like, we met him, he's the brother we met in Dressrosa, right? Like, that's who they're saying killed the king. And Brooke, again, another person that didn't know Vivi, is thinking about how, like, Alabasta has always been known as a place that was ruled pretty well and having, like, a pretty good king. And of course, now we pan back to the earlier crew members again, and, you know, they're all crying and upset and frustrated, and they're saying that they want to get Vivi, they want to save Vivi, let's go get Vivi, and Zoro's trying to be the voice of reason, and is kind of reminding him, you know, Luffy, what did you say about Ace that one time, that, you know, you have to trust him to make his own way and not intervene unless he really needs help. It's like, why are you underestimating Vivi? We know she can hold her own. If an opportunity presents itself, like we get some information or a lead on where she is and know we can go and help her, then we can go. But it doesn't really make sense to just go in blindly like this when we have no information about where she actually is. And then I love this next panel or two because I feel like it's a direct nod from Oda back to chapter 217 when we said goodbye to Vivi and everybody was moping and really sad. It was just kind of nice to have that classic good old straw hat moment, and now we actually see how their insults to Zoro have evolved and become relevant to what's happened recently. And we see Luffy, last time he went 3 sword style, no, 4 sword style as his insult to Zoro. And now he's like, you're an Oni, no, you're an Oni Gashima. And they're all making green Marimo Moss jokes at Zoro. Nami calls him a green Kaido. Chopper calls him Green Mom, like Green Mum the flowers, a kind of a play on that. And then, of course, Sanji, crappy Marimo, you know, classic Straw Hat shenanigans, right? And now we turn again to a more serious note, while in the background we have Zoro and Sanji going at it. Classic Straw Hat shenanigans, but we're also kind of taking a different direction now. And Robin is talking about all the different stuff that was happening in the world while they were away at Wano, kind of disconnected from all the information. And she's saying how the things in the world kind of are escalating pretty rapidly, saying that the warlord system being dismantled led the Cross Guild to be founded and even Buggy becoming an emperor. And of course, Luffy and all the other people who have met Buggy are aware that Buggy is an absolute joke, and that this is probably like some kind of mistake, especially Luffy. And then Robin is saying how there are a lot of other familiar names in here. Do you want me to tell you about them? And Luffy is like, you know what? I'm gonna let you decide. You can tell me what you think I need to know. If there's anything that I should be aware of, just to like kind of keep an ear out for, keep an eye on. And she's like, okay, you know, that makes sense. I know if I try to give you too much information, you'll get overwhelmed, so I'm just gonna let you, you know, take just that much for now. Which, we love Robin, and I love her relationship with Luffy because she respects him so much and she trusts him so much, and she's like, you know, I respect that, Luffy. Like, I understand. You don't want me to give you too much stuff. And after he's talked through some stuff with his crewmates, we see Luffy kind of relaxing. He's not as emotional, and he says that, you know, Sabo's innocent. He had a really strict upbringing, and he just wants everybody else to be free and not have their freedoms taken like his were. And Sabo also had the dream that he wanted to see the world and write a book about it, and now Luffy is going to talk about his dream. This is the first time that Oda has ever brought this up. We've been through 1,059 chapters, and now chapter 1060 is when this finally comes into play. It's Luffy's secondary dream, right? We know that he's always wanted to be the king of the pirates because he wants to be the freest person in the world, and he sees those two things as being equal, right? And of course, Oda doesn't actually tell us what it is. Classic Oda move, giving us the ... instead of telling us what the other half of the conversation is, right? But we see the crew's reactions. And we have Zoro, huh? Jinbei, what did you just say? Nami's like, what? And then we have some variance in the reactions. Brook starts laughing, saying, you're too much. Usopp's like, are you serious? Frankie is laughing. And he's like, that's perfect, that's great. Like, I feel like Frankie and Brook are just kind of like, you know what, Luffy is just a goofy guy, we're just gonna go along with whatever, even if it's kind of crazy, because it's funny. And Sanji's laughing, and it's like, someone needs to get his head checked out, or he's got a screw loose or something, and Robin just has a ... She's just kind of like, huh. And Chopper, being the youngest in the crew, thinks this is awesome. And Usopp again is like, there's no way anybody can do that. Like, kind of being the Debbie Downer that he is. And Luffy says that, you know, if I become the king of the pirates, I might actually be able to do this. And they're all very confused as to what Luffy is possibly thinking with this. And Luffy's like, wait, huh? Did I never mention this to any of you before? And they're all kind of like, no, not really. And then he's like, I guess that means the only people who know are Shanks, Ace, and Sabo. I guess I never told you guys. And Robin's like, oh, well, how did they react? And Luffy starts laughing, saying that they all laughed, and Shanks had, like, tears running down his face because he thought it was so funny. And Luffy again is just relaxing, and he says, that's what I want at the end of my dream. And after seeing that Luffy is quite serious about this, Jinbei also joins in the laughing with Frankie, Brook, and Sanji, and saying that, well, I joined this crew willingly, so I guess it is my problem, and I picked a kind of crazy captain. And of course Luffy's still laughing, and, you know, Chopper is like, that's so cool, and his little eyes are sparkles like anytime any of the boys see Frankie's new mecha stuff or new, like, equipment that he's made. And Nami's just kind of like, aw, like, that's definitely a you thing, Luffy. And now we're talking about the poneglyph, the final road poneglyph, and Frankie says, you know, we gotta find that last one, if any of this is even gonna be possible. And then we can go to Laugh Tale. And Robin is very serious because she's the one who has been researching all this stuff and everything. And she's like, you make it sound so easy, but she's like, it's been a long time since anybody even saw that poneglyph. Like, we don't have a single idea on how to even find this thing. Because we saw back in Wano that Kid knew who the man marked by flames was. Law might have known because he had at least a reaction, right? He was kind of just thinking about it. The rest of the Straw Hats, they don't have any idea where to go. Like, yes, they have more of the road poneglyphs collected than the other people, plus they have somebody that can read the poneglyphs, but they don't actually know where the next one is. They're just gonna bounce from island to island until they get to Lodestar, and then they're probably gonna have to turn around to find the last poneglyph unless they stumble upon it by accident, right? And that's where we leave the Straw Hats off before we turn to the next scene. So this next scene is actually taking place at a couple different locations simultaneously. We have the Navy headquarters, which is now in the New World after it was rebuilt. We have Mary Joie with the Garce, and we have Lelucia Kingdom, which is where Sabo is. And we start with a conversation happening between Navy headquarters and the Garce. And the Navy is telling the Garce that we've intercepted a transmission from Flame Emperor Sabo to the Kamabaka Queendom, which is, of course, the new headquarters of the Revolutionary Army, which kind of makes me wonder why that hasn't been invaded, because they know exactly where it is, but who knows. And they say that they've pinpointed where Sabo's coming from. And they note that Sabo's not using a white transponder snail to jam the call, which tells them that he's pretty desperate, so he's probably not going to speak for very long. And the Gorosei find out from the Marines that Sabo is at the Lucia Kingdom. And we kind of see that the Gorosei aren't really supposed to be individual people, because a lot of their dialogue, it should be like one person saying it, but it gets split between all of them, and I think this is so that Oda can tell us as like a narrative tool, don't think of them as distinct people, think of them as like an entity, right? And they say, Leloucia, really now? And then we see Im in their garden with the butterflies, you know, with the ... means they're thinking, they're listening to this conversation, and the Gorosei say that's one of the 8 nations that rebelled a few days ago. It would be an ideal place for Sabo to seek refuge. And they all kind of have the and they say, like, I see, he's an unlucky man, no, this is fate. Which kind of tells us whatever's going to happen to the Lucia Kingdom was already going to happen regardless of Sabo, right? And now we finally get to the Dendenmushi call between Dragon and the Revolutionaries and Sabo. And they're saying, like, Sabo-kun, like, we're so happy that you're safe. And he is super, super serious, and Dragon also looks super serious. But I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, because I feel like Dragon always looks serious. But he says, Dragon-san, I didn't kill King Cobra, which we kind of knew. Like, we knew that he didn't kill him, it was just kind of a convenient way to throw the revolutionaries under the bus for attacking Mary Joie, right? So this call is so, so important, right? Sabo is using just a regular Dendenmushi, right? A regular transponder snail, doesn't have the white Dendenmushi to block the jamming and keep the call private, because this information is so crucial and he needs them to get it as soon as possible. And he says when he was in Mary Joie, he saw something unbelievable. And at the same time, we're seeing the Lucia Kingdom, the sky is getting super dark, clouds are forming above the kingdom, and the people are saying it's almost like there's something huge up there. And then we see the royalty who's been imprisoned by the people because they're rebelling against the Lucia Kingdom for being horrible leadership, right? And we see King Siki and Princess Kamane, and they're just like complaining and saying like, Navy HQ's not gonna be happy with this, blah blah blah. And they're saying like, we don't want to kill you, we just want you to be less shitty and just confess to your crimes so we can move forward. And then Sabo drops a bombshell on us. So the next couple of panels are crazy, and every single thing in each panel, every panel, there's like a whole bunch of stuff happening, right? So the first panel we see Im, we see Im's eyes, we see both of them, and Im is just staring, right? We know Im has some kind of a way of listening in to what's happening, because we saw them responding to what was happening in their garden. But I think it's pretty safe to assume that Im is still at Mary Joie, and that Im has not just magically transported to Leloucia, right? We can pretty safely assume that Im is still here. And Sabo starts saying what he needs to say. It happened in the throne room at Pangaea Castle, and immediately the Gorosei are like, oh shit, oh shit. Sabo saw something he was not supposed to see. We need to deal with this now. Like, this cannot, we can't let this get out. And they say to cut the signal to the surveillance division's Dendenmushis. They cannot hear this. This is not information anybody outside of the Gorosei and Imu or Im are supposed to know. And then we see this panel, and we see this map of Leloucia at the same time as this panel, right? With the text going over, everything's kind of happening at the same time. So Im is staring at a map now. We know that Im's staring at a map. And they take 2 brushstrokes and cross out Leloucia Kingdom from the map. And we can actually see that Im, at least, is not actually a dark blob, because Oda just doesn't want us to see who they are and what they look like just yet. We only get to see the eyes, but we can see from the fingers that they must at least be humanoid, and they're not like a Lunarian or something who has that darker skin, because we can see that the skin is pale like most of the humans in the One Piece story, right? And While Eam is crossing out Lelucia from the map, Sabo says, "I thought there was no king of the world, but the empty throne wasn't empty. I saw," and then we turn back to Lelucia Kingdom again. After Sabo says this, the Gorosei says, "As far as the surveillance division is concerned, no one detected anything abnormal today. No information was intercepted. As for Lelucia, that country never existed." And at the same time, we see the scene playing out with that overlay of the Denden Mushi call. We see Lelucia Kingdom, and the people are staring up, like looking directly up at the sky. We can see a shadow, a silhouette of something in the clouds. And they say, "What's up there? A shadow?" And just different terrified reactions. And I think if you notice, Sabo isn't looking up. Sabo is looking out. His vision is upward, but it's not directly up, watching something come down, right? It looks like he's a little bit away from the scene. So I don't think that Sabo is dead from this. I don't think he is somebody that got hit by it. I think he watched it happen. Because Oda doesn't generally kill important characters in this way. Usually they die in fights. And I think that we need Sabo to be alive because we don't know for certain that that call went through. We don't know that the Revolutionary Army got to hear the rest of that call. We know that the Surveillance Division, they didn't get to hear the rest of the call, but we're not entirely sure about the Revolutionary Army. So if that call got intercepted and got disconnected, or they interfered somehow and they couldn't hear Sabo, he needs to be alive to pass that information along. Secondly, I also still believe that Sabo is with Vivi. I think that he's with Vivi. I think that he rescued her, he pulled her away, and that we're going to see her reunite with the Straw Hats at some point. And in order for that to happen, he can't be dead. Plus, I really doubt Oda would kill both of Luffy's brothers. That would just seem a little bit cruel. But we see Eam definitely is responsible for this. We see Eam's eye as this happens. And in this panel, I've recreated it as closely as I can. I think it's like one of two things here. It's either like a moon-like structure or some kind of round space planet type thing. Some kind of just like a round structure in space that's like a naturally occurring thing pulled down into this country. Or if you look into the shadows above where this either beam or moon-like structure hits Lelucia, there's still shadow, right? There's still a shadow above it, and it's hard to tell if that's the shadow because of where the light's reflecting from it, or if there's something above beaming this down. It's really difficult to tell. Like, this is definitely what happened at God Valley. And if we think about Enies Lobby, maybe this is what happened at Enies Lobby, why there's that giant crater. But who's to say, right? Who's to say? Only time will tell when Oda eventually tells us. And then we see another Denden Mushi call, and it's the Marines. "We have reports of seaquakes off the southern eastern shore. Please be aware of tsunamis." And then, of course, the Revolutionary Army. Sabo-kun? Sabo-kun? Nothing. Right? So, it's kind of hard to interpret what happened here because there's nothing. Right? It's just rocky ocean. So, we have a couple questions that we now need answers to, right? One, are the Marines no longer aware that there was a kingdom there? Has that been erased from their memories? Because they don't talk about Lelucia. Did Eam, by crossing it out and hitting it with either a power or a weapon of some sort, did Eam also make that country never exist in people's minds? Is that how they took control of the 100-year void and the knowledge of that? Next, is Sabo actually dead? Because we don't see anything, right? We don't actually see anything on the ocean. If you zoom in and look really closely, you can kind of see debris and stuff still kind of flying up in the air. So the question is, like, are those waves hiding a ship that Sabo is on, or debris that Sabo is hiding on? Or did he actually get wiped out? My next question is how much of the call did Dragon and the revolutionaries hear? Did they actually hear Sabo talk about Emu? And of course, we don't get answers to this. We don't know. Because that is where Oda leaves us in this scene. And now we're gonna move back to the Straw Hats. So a couple of days have passed on the Sunny, and our Straw Hats are very, very close to their next destination. They've clearly entered a stable climate zone. It's a winter island that we're going to be going to next, and we know we're not going to Sphinx. We confirmed that when we said goodbye to Marco, right? So we're in this crazy climate, and they're trying to avoid icebergs, they're trying to get through the crazy snow, and, you know, now that we have Jinbei, hopefully sailing will be a little bit easier because he's such a skilled helmsman, right? And so we see Jinbei trying to work with Nami, and they're trying to navigate and sail through and try to get to the next island safely, which is kind of cool to finally see. And now that we have somebody that has the same kind of skill level as Nami, we have this excellent navigator and this excellent helmsman kind of working together. And so they're kind of freaking out, trying to get everything together. And then we have Robin and Chopper, and they're just having this cute little moment. Robin thinks Chopper is adorable because we know Robin loves anything cute, and having Chopper as a crewmate, she just loves him because he's so cute and small. And we see that he has one of the straw hats from Wano, not like Luffy's kind of straw hat, but the pitched straw hats like we saw on Oars Jr. And Robin is inside and Chopper's heading out, which he probably shouldn't have since he's so tiny and the weather is so crazy. And we see Luffy is on his special seat and he's pointing to something and he's like, "What is that, Nami?" And she's like, "What?" And then she looks and there's this giant eddy. And Nami says that it looks like a giant warm eddy, but it's going upward, which is kind of confusing. And I don't know if this is Jinbei or Nami actually who's saying what, because it can honestly be either of them since they both know a lot about the sea. But somebody says it must be a warm mass of warm water being forced up somewhere. So it is a current, and the current's like wrapped around something. And if you look in the center of it, you can kind of see that the center is darker, meaning that there's something in there. And Brooke is like, "It looks like an afro," which is kind of hysterical. And Nami's saying that, like, this is dangerous, like, "Jinbei, we really gotta get away from this, it could pull us in and it would not be good." And Jinbei's like, yeah, no, I got it. And Luffy sees the silhouette inside of the warm eddy and he says, "Somebody's trapped in the water." And Sanji's like, "No, he's right. I can definitely hear a lady in distress." But that's probably because we know Sanji has pretty good observational hockey. And, you know, they're like, "Are you serious? What are we supposed to even do? How are we supposed to even get them out of there? We can't go near that." And Zoro cuts it and just straight up chops it. Just cuts the water, which I think that this is probably Zoro adapting and kind of building on Kinemon's Foxfire style, where he can cut flames. I think Zoro's probably used that technique's concept and can now also cut through water, or at least like slice and not just like fling his sword through it, you know what I mean? And of course, the timing of Chopper opening the door is horrible, because as they're trying to get away from this current and as Zoro's slicing apart the warm eddy, I'm assuming that the current disrupts the sea and probably pulls the ship in, or at least makes winds release or something crazy like that. And Chopper immediately gets sucked away and pulled away, and Luffy reaches out and stretches out to grab him, and Luffy gets pulled too because Luffy didn't anchor himself to the Sunny, and so the two of them get pulled away and probably are on the next island now. That's would be my assumption, is that Luffy and Chopper get pulled to the next island, and the rest of them are gonna sail to the next island and meet up with Luffy and Chopper after, and we'll probably have some Luffy Chopper time with the native people of whatever island we're at, or maybe, you know, we just won't see Luffy for a little bit or something, or maybe we'll focus on the rest of the crew. Who knows? Because Oda's kind of set up this next saga to be very complicated, and there's probably going to be a lot of stories happening at the same time, because we have stuff with the revolutionaries, we have different stuff happening with these new Seraphim that we saw last chapter, and of course the Straw Hats are trying to get to Laugh Tale, right? And the person who was inside of the worm Eddy is none other than Jewelry Bonnie. I cannot tell you how excited I am that Bonnie is finally coming into the story. We have spent time with most of the Worst Generation at this point, except for Yu Rouge and Bonnie. Everybody else has been pretty important in the story at some time or another. Some characters stayed in it a lot longer, like Law was in the story a lot longer than Edgy or Beige, however you want to say it. And like Apu, obviously, and Hawkins were not super large roles in the story either, but Bonnie is a character that has a lot of interesting connections. Like, she's from the Sherbet Kingdom, and the Sherbet Kingdom is also where Kuma was the king of, right? So that means she definitely can give us some answers about Kuma, and I suspect Vegapunk, right? Like, although she doesn't necessarily have a connection to Vegapunk, I feel like Bonnie was probably looking to seek out Vegapunk at some point, because Vegapunk is the person who put Kuma through this. Like, yeah, he was probably told to do it, but he still did it, you know what I mean? So I suspect that we're gonna hear about Vegapunk from her, or at least, like, we'll be learning about Vegapunk very soon now that she's in the story. But I know that the bounty is something that is probably frustrating for a lot of people, that she has such a low bounty in comparison to the other people in the Worst Generation, sitting at 320 million now. But I think, honestly, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because most of the other supernovas or Worst Generation people have progressed a lot further than she has. Like, Law, Kid, Killer, Zoro, and Luffy, all 5 of them were going after an emperor, and they took down 2 emperors, right? That's why everybody's bounty shot up. And then we have Drake, Hawkins, and Apu, who allied themselves with an emperor. Beige or Beiji allied himself with an emperor. Yu Rouge we haven't really heard much about. And then of course Blackbeard is also an emperor. So like, most of the people in their generation have really, really powerful connections or have become super notorious, while Bonnie, it kind of seems like she was on her own path for vengeance for Kuma. And that's kind of what I took it as. So to me, she's somebody that's been kind of working behind the scenes and hasn't really been a front runner. because that's not her role in the story. But I do think we're going to learn a lot now that Bonnie's in the story, especially because last time we saw her was at the Reverie, and we saw her crying when she saw Kuma. And I kind of wonder if something with his pawpaw fruit is how she ended up in the warm eddy, or if somebody else did that to her. I'm not really sure, but I'm really excited to see what Oda ends up doing. That's probably about it for this video. Thank you for tuning in if you did. I'll catch you next time. Bye!